And finally, I will introduce today's speaker. Mary Jewett has worked in a variety of roles at Lakes Environmental Association for over a decade. She's currently LEA CBI Director, as well as the coordinator for the DEP's CBI and Plant Control Grant Program. Mary also conducts boat inspection trainings for bass clubs and CBI groups throughout Maine. In the winter months, Mary focuses on teaching young people at local schools about protecting our lakes and watersheds. Mary graduated from Unity College in Maine with a degree in ecology and has been working on protecting our natural resources ever since. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you. So I will share my screen. Hopefully this works. Yes? Is that working? I'm going to assume that it is. Yes, okay, I got a thumbs up from Tony. Thank you. So, yeah, courtesy boat inspections. I actually, I just looked at the participant list and I'm seeing that at least two people, Peter Lowell and Karen Hannell, probably should be doing this presentation because they were there. The courtesy boat inspection program is about 20 years old, and so I have only been involved with it for about half that time. And but I'm going to do my best to represent the program and let you guys know some of the history. So, like Tony said, I work for the Lakes Environmental Association in Bridgeton, and we've been involved with that program since its inception. So let's start at the beginning. These are headlines from other states, and back in the late 90s we were starting to see these kind of alarm bells from other states saying this is happening. Other states had these really bad infestations, and folks in Maine, primarily Peter Lowell and a small group of people, were kind of raising the alarm a little bit. So in response to this, we had the first Maine Milfoil Summit, and a big part of this summit, kind of one of the major issues, we were talking about Eurasian milfoil. So at LEA, we already knew we had variable milfoil in the Songo River, and we were looking at that infestation and thinking about, like, what can we do about this, and then that led to the question, how can we prevent this from happening in other places? So the first Milfoil Summit included the VLMP, which is now the Lake Stewards of Maine, the DEP, LEA, and the UMaine Water Resources Institute. So these were the co-hosts. These were the kind of the instigators. That might not be quite the right word. But during that, on the agenda, there were speakers from Vermont and New Hampshire, which were both states that were kind of feeling some alarm about this and already had infestations kind of raging a little bit. So they came to speak. And also the commissioner of the DEP, Martha Kirkpatrick, also spoke. And all of these organizations were also present. So there was, I mean, federal agencies, state agencies, nonprofits in Maine, all over were involved with kind of starting this conversation, and we're at the table talking. And I wanted to ask the first question. So if Drew wants to put up this poll question, I don't know if I'm going to be able to see it, but I can. So if folks can just, and this is neat. Looks like lots of people in my group, 5 to 15 years, that's where I'm at. So we've got 3 people that have been involved since the beginning. Maybe we're at that first Milfoil Summit. And so those folks, if you see any glaringly obvious mistakes that I'm making during the presentation, I certainly want to know about it, and we can either wait until the Q&A or during the presentation. This is something I would, at the end when we're doing Q&A, I would love it if some of the folks that have been doing it for 15 to 22 years, if you have answers to some questions, I would love to hear those. So here are those. Yeah, so pretty good mix. All right, I'm going to close that. So in 2000, so kind of part of the conversation, kind of the beginning of the conversation, LD 2851 was passed. And this was an act to prevent the spread of invasive aquatic plants. This was the bill, the law that said it is illegal to transport aquatic plants on your boat or trailer. It was any aquatic plant on your boat or trailer. And so it was just the tip. It was just the beginning of this program, and it got it on the books that this is a problem. We care about it. We're thinking about it. And this was just kind of the beginning. So I actually want to ask the second question right now. So Drew, can you throw that up? So back in the day, there are these posters, and of course we still look at these posters, the most unwanted plants in Maine. So this was kind of a list with pictures that said these are the ones that we are most concerned about. They're on our borders. All right. I'm gonna all right, so that's somewhat of a pretty good mix too here. So the answer is 11. For those of you that guessed that, I almost gave it away. But 11, and actually if you look at those, my polling questions, I think they were all prime numbers for some reason. I was really liking that. So these are two different posters, came out around the same time, same pictures. The Portland Water District inverted the pictures so that the plants are white and the background is green. The VLMP, or Lake Stewards of Maine, did it the other way. But these posters, I still see them. They're hung up in my office. And now we have 6 of the 11 documented in Maine. So not great, and it's more than it was when we started this program, but I think there's a lot of awareness. Okay, and then the really big important bill got passed. So in 2001, LD 1812, an act to prevent infestation of invasive aquatic plants and to control other invasive species. So this was the most comprehensive invasive aquatic species law to date in the country. So it had teeth. One of the most important factors was the invention of the Lake and River Protection Sticker. And these oldies will look familiar to some of you. So this was a sticker that all boaters in the state of Maine had to have on their boats. So at the time, the non-resident sticker, so folks from out of state, it was $20. And the resident sticker you got with your registration was $10. And the money from this sticker just went really far and is still going really far. So it funded 3 new DEP positions, 6 new game wardens, an inland fisheries and wildlife biologist. And this was a kind of a, I'm trying to think of the word, not very clear operating costs necessary to implement an invasive aquatic plant prevention program. So that was in the bill, and it was a little bit open-ended. So what came out of that is the rapid response program, the CBI and plant grants, which are now a very large part of this program, education, supplies, we have stickers, brochures, booklets, all of those things. So that had teeth, and those 6 new game wardens were and are in charge of enforcement. So this was a law that was enforced and still is. So having that lake and river protection sticker was a requirement. And that passed June 20th, 2001 to take effect immediately. And those of you that were there and involved probably know a little bit more about some of the contention, but I read a couple of articles, and it was not a sure thing. And as we know from a lot of bills, there was a lot of back and forth, a lot of argument, and this was a new fee that we were charging Mainers and non-Mainers alike. So it, which is always has some argument to it, but it passed. It's exciting. So sticker sales, get ready for probably one of the least interesting bar graphs ever. I mean, it's okay, but the sticker sales over the last, whatever that is, 18 years, haven't changed a lot, except for the last one, which we'll talk about. So this was all dependent on how many boaters came to Maine, how many Mainers registered their boats, and it clearly has fluctuated a little bit, but those numbers really didn't change very much. The change in the distribution of the funds, that changed in 2014 with an amendment with the bill LD 1626, which stated that the ratio of where the funding went was going to change. So up until this point, 60% went to the Department of Environmental Protection and 40% went to inland fisheries and wildlife. And it was determined in 2014 that the DEP needed more. With the grants going out and rapid response, plant control, all of these things were really needed an infusion. So the legislature voted to change it. So now 80% of the funds go to the DEP and 20% go to inland fisheries and wildlife. So that kind of bumped along for a few years. 2019, this was really exciting, LD 235. And this was a bill that we've been arguing for a long time, that the sticker fee needed to go up. Everything was going up, salaries, minimum wage, what we were paying CBIs, price, the cost of boats, all of this stuff was going up. And that sticker fee had stayed the same all that time. So we finally got that passed. And so now in 2020, it is now $15 for Maine residents and $35 for out-of-state boaters. And we wanted more, but it got whittled down. But as you can see, it is an infusion. We got a lot more this year or last year. And so the hope is that that will continue to rise or stay the same. We did have a decrease in sticker sales, like not the actual funding from it, but how many people actually bought the sticker last year, probably because of the pandemic and folks either not coming here or not registering their boats because of closures. So yeah, so that was a nice little boost. So allocation of sticker money, this is from the DEP. This is a DEP pie chart. I don't have information back this far for inland fisheries and wildlife, but I discovered this. And so this was sticker money in 2002. And that's really the first year that we had money to talk about, because it was passed in 2001. So this was when spending really started. So you can see. And then this was 2019. So this proposed budget is before our little windfall, but I'm sure it's going to be very similar. So you can, if you read it, there's some big differences, really big differences. Really the biggest, almost the biggest piece of the pie is plant management. So in 2002, we had some infestations that we knew about, but we weren't really tackling plant control yet. So, so now that's a very large part of the budget, and staff. Of course, we have these wonderful folks at the DEP that run this program, and we could not manage without them. Inspection, so that is the CBI program. Monitoring, that is doing assessments of lakes, that's plant patrolling, doing surveys, finding new infestations. And I'm wondering if Karen Hannell might know this, but where rapid response is in there. So the DEP has a rapid response program where if a new infestation is discovered, they rapidly respond to it. So obviously the budget has changed. The quality of the pie chart has gone up, probably not enough compared to the 2002. I feel like we could do a little bit better. So maybe we'll do that. So, and education has fallen significantly. And I think we need to get back to more education. I'll talk about that towards the end of the presentation. Were there questions, Tony? I feel like things were lighting up.
Yeah, we have a couple questions here.
Yeah, I feel like now's a good time.
So there was a question about in-state Maine boats versus out-of-state boats has nothing to do with residents. And yes, I think that's true. It just depends on where you register your boat.
Yes.
Right.
Right. Yes. Sorry about that. Yes, exactly. So you are right, that somebody who might be a resident of New York, but is registering their boat in Maine. So it is boats registered in Maine. And the majority of funding comes from people registering their boats in Maine. So it's the percentage of boats being registered from out of state or getting a sticker from out of state is lower. So that's where most of that funding comes from.
Great. And then there's another question asking what agency is in charge of making sure boaters have a sticker, and do they give a fine if they find someone that doesn't?
Yes, inland fisheries and wildlife, which the game wardens are part of that department. The game wardens are in charge of monitoring and looking at people's boats, and they do give out fines. I think it's up to $500 now, but that is the game warden's discretion. I don't think it usually isn't that high unless somebody is combative. But yes, the game wardens are in charge of that. Any law enforcement could give that ticket. And we've had this discussion before, as why can't it be part of just the ticket book if somebody's speeding? But it isn't. So the game wardens manage that. And they do give out, I think, a few hundred citations every year for the sticker. So infestations, where are we at? This is the oldest one I could find, the map from 2003. And this is important, the word documented invasive plant locations. And there's 19 on there. So documented is the key word, because at this point, we hadn't surveyed all the lakes in Maine. We still haven't surveyed all the lakes in Maine. So these are the infestations we knew about in 2003. And this is the map for this year. And so you can see that we added about, what was that, 12 lakes, give or take. A couple got taken off. Pleasant Lake and Parker Pond in Casco were taken off of the list a few years ago. So that was exciting. And we have some new ones and we have new plants. So I'm worried this year about Lake Arrowhead. Just discovered last year European naiad or brittle water nymph. I'm not sure which one to use, so I always just say both. But so a new infestation, a new invasive plant was found in Lake Arrowhead last year. And Lake Arrowhead is home to one of the worst variable leaf milfoil infestations as well. So that's something that we're going to keep an eye on. And then also new this year is Androscoggin Lake. And that it's not some big, huge, full-blown thing, but it is a new infestation discovered last year. And then way up, way up in the corner, number 4, Big Lake, which is an interesting name. So Big Lake, 3 years ago, they discovered a large amount of variable leaf milfoil. And that was kind of a wake-up call for a lot of the lake associations down east. They were like, oh, there it is. It was always kind of a southern Maine problem. And now it's like this full-blown infestation that was discovered. This is a really cool thing that I'm going to quickly touch on, the lake vulnerability analysis. So this is a program that the DEP did, and Denise Blanchette, I think, was pretty instrumental in doing this. Karen can speak to that. They did this study and they used these parameters on each lake. So volume of use, proximity to an infested water body, and potential for colonization. And this nice little chart is what that means. So volume of use is how many people are using it, and boat access was key. So is there access, public access to this lake? So that will give it a higher rating. Proximity to an infested water body. Obviously, if you're close by, you're more likely to maybe see boats from that infested water body. And then potential for colonization is really about habitat. So how shallow is it? What's the topography of the lake like? What's the shoreline look like? So these are the factors used to assess all of the lakes. So this map shows the scores for all the lakes in Maine. So they took all of these parameters and they plugged in lakes and came up with this vulnerability assessment, which is pretty amazing. And it can be used by lake associations to assess their risk. It can be used by the Lake Stewards of Maine or plant patrollers to figure out, okay, the highest risk lakes are probably where we should be doing these plant surveys, because it's a high risk, but it also has a higher chance of already being infested. And so this was a really interesting study, and I do have the website. It's on the DEP website, but there is a GIS site where you can actually just click on a lake and it will tell you about its vulnerability. So I'm happy to put that in the chat a little bit later, maybe during Q&A at the end, so that people can click right on that and look at their lake if they are interested. And also part of that site, the green dots are infested water bodies. So, and it's got infested water bodies out into parts of New England as well. So it's an interesting study. And so you can also see that proximity to an infested water body in Maine. Inspections. This bar graph is a little more interesting, I think, than the funding bar graph. because it just goes up mostly. So 2001, this was prior to funding, prior to really kind of official CBI program. There were just a few test sites, test organizations that were collecting inspections. And then it goes up. And the first kind of big jump, 2004, that is when the grant program, the CBI grant program, really started taking off. So a lot more organizations were doing that. A lot more organizations and lake associations were catching on to the program and applying. And the next kind of jump was in 2010, and Karen Hanel and I had a little bit of a discussion about why there was that jump. The only change that I could find was in 2010 is when bass clubs started submitting their data to the program. So they started doing their inspections and actually submitting that data. But apparently it wasn't 20,000 inspections. So not sure exactly where that jump came from. And then the huge jump last year was not necessarily as a result of having additional funding. It was because we are still in a pandemic. We saw such an enormous increase in the number of boats coming to our boat launches. Stressfully so. I think probably a lot of people that live on Maine lakes noticed an uptick in activity. I know that our boat inspectors noticed that. And so we just had a lot more. I've got a big question mark on 2021. I have no idea what kind of boating behavior we're going to see, if it's still going to be this high or not. So that's the difference in inspections. So if you think about the funding versus number of inspections, you would think, okay, we've got more funding, we'll have more inspections. And that hasn't necessarily been the case because the amount of funding each year didn't change very much. So what did change? So in 2002, these were the associations, lakes and towns that were receiving money for the grant program. It's a very short list. 2021, we've got, hang on, that many. I didn't actually count them. So we have, this is the change in number of organizations that are doing inspections. So, and our inspection numbers are increasing because more organizations are coming on board. And I know of some small lake associations where the courtesy boat inspection program is their biggest expense. Probably a lot of places it's their biggest expense, and members and towns and communities know that this is really the most important thing that we can do to protect our lakes from invasive species. So more people are hopping on board, and people are covering more hours. They're giving more money for these programs. This is that same list. The highlighted ones are associations that have infested water bodies. So these organizations get direct funds. So the DEP gives them money directly to fund their CBI programs. Everybody else applies to request money. And it's about half and half. About half of the funds go to infested water bodies, and then the other half goes to all these other folks. In 2020, the CBI programs cost approximately $705,000. And this is what was spent overall. And 67% of that was from organizations. And it's not all cash match. So for cash, organizations put in about $350,000. And the rest of that, it's like $120,000 worth of match is volunteers. So a lot of organizations use just volunteer inspectors. Often the coordinator volunteers their time. So a lot of that comes from volunteers. that care about the program. These are some of the organizations that I went on and found some of the logos, and I counted it up. 12 have loons in them, which I thought that was actually a little bit low, but the program wouldn't exist without these organizations. So I think it's really good to recognize these folks. And I think some of you are in the audience representing these associations, and thank you so much, because we wouldn't have made the difference that's been made without you. Let's talk saves. So a save is happens when a boat inspector finds an invasive plant either coming into or leaving a body of water. Now, this list does not represent all of the saves. There's been about 1,800 or so saves since we started keeping track of the numbers in 2009. So up until 2009, we would know that there was movement, but the numbers weren't necessarily collected. So 1,800 in that time. So I did not put all of those on the list because that would have been miserable for everybody involved. But there are a few kind of notable ones. And I will say, and I don't know if anybody's here from Lake Arrowhead, and I don't necessarily want to call anybody out, but about 1,000 of those 1,800 saves are from Lake Arrowhead. Many of them coming out and people returning to Lake Arrowhead after leaving. So that just was kind of a shock to me. So the first one, 2001 down here, that was before the CBI program started. There had been talk about it, and the discussions were going on. The bill had just been passed, and some concerned citizens in Gray, Crystal Lake and Gray, found Eurasian milfoil on a boat coming from New York. And that was kind of a bit of a bomb, and also like a told you so kind of moment where it was like, this is happening. This is why we're concerned, and justifiably so. In 2014, this water chestnut on Square Pond, that was my first experience with, I didn't find it, but it was a big deal. And I had not been working at LEA for very long. And I remember hearing about that and having it be kind of this moment for me to think about that movement. And Square Pond is just over the border from New Hampshire. And so that was, again, kind of a moment. And the boater actually ended up not launching. They turned around, they went to a car wash or a boat wash station and cleaned off their boat after that nut was discovered, which was kind of amazing. Toddy Pond, this Eurasian milfoil on Toddy Pond. I don't know if anybody's here from Toddy Pond, but this was a little bit frustrating because the inspector came on duty, found Eurasian milfoil on the trailer. The game warden came and went out on the lake, found the boater, gave him a citation. He ended up having to go to court and got a $100 fine for transporting Eurasian milfoil into Maine and launching their boat, which was frustrating for me. I guess he was really, really sorry, but that was frustrating. 2018, this was a big one. Eurasian milfoil was found on a boat coming from the St. Lawrence River, and it had a zebra mussel on it. I'm going to go a little bit more in depth with that find in a minute. This hydrilla. So these are experiences that I've had, and I still get frustrated. There was a huge bass tournament on Sebago Lake in 2019, and a game warden was inspecting boats as they went in Standish on Sebago Lake, and found hydrilla on a boat from Georgia, and just took it off and said, have a nice day to this person. And it was frustrating for me, because there is part of that law is you can get a ticket for transporting aquatic plants. And this is a highly invasive aquatic plant that was found on a boat. So that the enforcement part of it, as far as for transporting plants, I think is a bit lacking. And then last year, Eurasian milfoil was found on a boat at a bass tournament. And this was special circumstances. When I heard bass tournament, I got so mad. But the guy launched, and when they came out, the boat inspector found the milfoil on their trailer, and it was trapped between the trailer bunk and the boat, and nobody saw it. The bass inspector and the courtesy boat inspector did not see it, and the guy had hosed down his boat, the whole deal, and they hadn't seen it. So that again is a really good reason to inspect trailers, and that is something that our inspectors do, that they inspect trailers when they come on duty and after they leave the water, because you never know what's going to be trapped. And then 2021, who knows what fun and exciting things are going to happen this year. So this special circumstance, Pennesseewassee or Norway Lake, the inspector found this very healthy looking strand of Eurasian milfoil on a boat coming from the St. Lawrence River. And then they got it to the DEP, and Karen Hannell, who was here, said, "What is that? What is that little thing?" And it's a zebra mussel. And it was stuck on Eurasian milfoil, which is just kind of a little bit ridiculous, but it was growing right on there, and it just makes you think, okay, how many things have we missed doing this? So zebra mussels are a highly invasive mollusk. Probably, I would think everybody in this audience has heard of them. They're very tiny. They spread and they cover everything, and they grow inside propellers, water intake pipes, inside your boats, all of these places. So this was kind of a, oh my goodness, like this is happening. Here we are. It's really happening. And it was kind of like that Eurasian moment in 2001. And now it's like, okay, we've been thinking about these aquatic animals for a while, but now it's real. It's like getting real. So what do we do? Clean, drain, dry. And probably people have heard that as well. So this was our sticker for a long, long time. Remove all plants. These are the stickers, the winch stickers that we gave out to any boater that would put it on their trailer. We would give them one of these remove all plant stickers. We are transitioning to the clean, drain, dry message. So this is our new sticker, our new winch sticker, and it encourages clean, which is already the Maine state law. You have to clean off your boat with plants and mud and muck and all of these things. Draining your bilge, just removing all drain plugs, and then drying, making sure you dry out your boat, because invasive species like spiny water flea, which is a little invasive, super harmful little, I think it's a crustacean maybe. This is a fish hook flea. So these are tiny, but they build up obviously on fishing line there. And if little fish eat them, it can damage them. So those will hide in standing water. Zebra mussels again. These are Asian clams. So Asian clams are in New Hampshire. So they're sort of close. So Asian clams is another mollusk that we are keeping an eye out for. So these are things, if you drain and dry your boat, we can avoid transporting these things into Maine. And I will say, not to be a Debbie Downer, but they could already be here, right? We have a lot of lakes, thousands of lakes in the state of Maine. So, and we haven't looked at all of them, and it's hard to do a full survey of all of them. So this is one of the reasons why it's so important for people to do these inspections and do it anywhere, not just when they're going across state lines, just between any water body in Maine too, because you never know. So some other options, decontamination stations. These are not in Maine, but these are like high power, high heat nozzles, so that, and you just pressure wash your boat in between lakes. This is a drain. This is part of the CBI video that I made last year. So making sure that you drain your boat in between lakes and making sure that you put your drain plugs back in when you get to your destination is very important. We'll talk for a second about LD 184. So some other folks might have some frustration with this too. Those of you that that have been around for a few months. An act to minimize the propagation of invasive aquatic plants. So that is not a great description. It probably maybe should have had a different name, but I don't think it would have mattered. LD 184 would have required boaters to remove their drain plugs between lakes. So you would have had to have your drain plugs out when you're driving around. And when you get to the next water body, you plug it back in and you launch. So it's important, like, for the reduction or the prevention of the spread of these invasive animals. And aside, brittle water nymph or European naiad, which they just found at Lake Arrowhead, has teeny tiny little seeds that can also be found in standing water. So making sure you drain all that is really important. And I have some bitterness because it did not pass. So this was just a couple of months ago. It was before the legislature, and they ended up rejecting it, claiming that we need to do more education instead of more laws in regards to this, which is a point. I don't necessarily agree with it. So here's New Hampshire, 2017, they passed their drain plug law. Michigan, I saw that somebody was here from Michigan, which is neat. They also have a clean drain dry law. Wyoming, Montana, Oregon, which I love their sticker, it's amazing. Kansas, New York, and all of these other ones. And this is actually not the complete list of states that have at least the clean off aquatic plants, which is our law, and a drain plug law. And some of them actually have dry as well, that you have to dry your boat in between lakes as well. So it was a little disappointing that our legislature did not take this on. And I know it's like, just because other states are doing it doesn't mean that we have to, and all of these things, but it's a really smart step to take. And in 2001, when 1812 was passed, we were ahead. We were ahead of the times. Let's get in front of this thing. Let's catch that Eurasian milfoil in 2001, because we are aware, we're on top of it. Let's do this. Let's have this really strong program. So we were way ahead of our time, and now we're falling behind, right? So we are looking ahead and saying, well, what about Asian clams? What about zebra mussels? What about these invasive animals? Let's stop them before they get here. And LD 184 would have been a really good step towards that. I want to add Maine to this list. There's our sticker. So we will, and that particular, the drain plug issue has gone before the legislature before, and then this year, and that is something that we are going to continue to pursue, because even just having the law on the books, and I know Tony was at the legislature with me, and Susan was there. And the argument against we don't need more laws on the books is, if we could tell boaters as inspectors, if we could tell them this is a law, you have to remove your drain plug, it just gives us more weight during an inspection. We already ask. So a courtesy boat inspection, we ask that people remove their drain plug. We talk to them about clean, drain, dry. But if we could say, you have to do it, or you could get in trouble, that would just, I think, give it more teeth. So hopefully in the future, we can get this passed. And then we are gonna, like, what do we do into the future? We're just gonna continue our courtesy boat inspection program. So the white shirts are the older inspectors, and one of them is actually somebody I went to high school with. So that was quite a while ago that she had that job. And these are all dedicated employees, dedicated inspectors that often come back year after year. A couple of them are mine, and they come back year after year. So this year we'll be out, maybe masked, maybe not. Probably we will be. And so the future of the CBI program really is, we're going to continue to welcome more lakes in, and expand programs on more lakes, do more inspections, fight for the drain plug law, and maybe in a few years try and increase that sticker fee again. So last slide. I went through the list of names, and the first, I guess it was the second annual summit, the only thing I could find was the list of people who wanted lunch, which I thought was kind of funny. And so on that list there was a list of names of people that have been involved with the program for years and years. This is not at all comprehensive, but these are folks that I could find photos of. Bob Mercier from Peabody Pond was also on this list. Here's our DEP, Karen and John, and Roberta Hill from Lake Stewards of Maine. They've been involved since the inception. Peter in his flaming swim shorts and his LEA shirt has been, had really spearheaded a lot of this program from the beginning. Maggie Shannon down in her striped sweater. I took over the CBI training from her. Huge shoes to fill. So passionate about this program. Roy Bouchard in the middle there from, he's retired from the DEP, was instrumental in getting the program off the ground. Judy Ingram, with her beautiful smile, and Mary Jane Dillingham are both, they manage CBI programs and were involved from the beginning. And then Colin Holm, who is the new director of the Lakes Environmental Association in his black sweater. He has been, he started out as an intern at LEA and now is our director. So some nice familiar faces. These are folks that have been involved since the beginning. All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mary. That was really a great look back at the long history that we've got now. It seems like it was just yesterday that the program got started, but so much has happened.
Yes.
So we do have a number of questions, and I'm kind of going to work my way backwards. So there's a question about draining your boat so that water does not flow back into the lake. And somebody else had asked a question about that as well. And just what I had replied to them was, it is important to drain your boat away from the lake, but the most important thing is to make sure that you're not draining water from a different lake into the lake that you are going into.
Yes. Yep.
So if you're leaving the lake and you're draining your boat from the water in your boat from that lake, it's not as much of a deal to drain the water into the lake as it would be to drain the water from another lake into that lake.
Yes. Yep. And I have had inspectors that ask, I mean, if it's not like a super busy day, or if there's a place where somebody can pull away from the launch and drain as much as possible. If that's possible, then inspectors will ask them to do that if they're coming from a different lake. But if the only option is pulling the plug and having the water from a different lake go into your lake, don't pull the plug.
Yeah. So it sort of related to that, you know, there's a question about how does one clean their boat? Do we need a power washing station at the boat ramp? And then finally, will driving away provide the drying function is their question.
So the rule of thumb, and this is going to be really hard for a lot of people, is 5 days dry will kill any of those animals, the zebra mussels, the spiny water flea, those things. If they dry out for 5 days, that's the rule of thumb for drying. Or taking a towel and wiping down every part of your boat to get any additional standing water. So just driving from one place to another, unless you've got days in between, is not going to be sufficient. But yeah, I know there are decontamination protocols where certain chemicals or like high heat, high pressure can kind of be a replacement for that drying period.
That's what I was going to mention, that, you know, there's a lot of these, you know, decontamination stations that are kind of popping up in places. And one, it's only useful if it's used, and it's not mandatory that somebody use it. But having a, you know, power washing your boat is great, but some of these critters really need high heat in order to be affected. And I know that, you know, so I volunteer for the Lake Stewards of Maine, surveying lakes outside of the Cawpacy watershed. And when we bring our kayaks or canoes from one lake to another, we use a solution of vinegar and water to wipe down our boats before we bring it to another water body. And I've started having our survey team, our plant survey team, do the same thing, cleaning their boats off before they bring it to another lake, just to be sure that they're getting anything that, you know, we don't want to transport, you know, even the tiniest little seed, like you were saying for, you know, the brittle naiad, the seeds are really, really tiny.
Yeah.
So here's another great question. So what is the average cost for a lake that's been invaded in order to stop or eradicate the invasive species? And then they ask about, is there a cost share program if invasive species are identified? Who should that association contact?
That is a huge question. I know that for LEA, we have spent, and Peter probably knows this number better than I do, but I know that it's at least $500,000 in the Songo River over the past 15 or so years. It is very expensive. But it depends, and people are going to hate that answer, but it really depends. Depends on the severity of your infestation, what plant is there. Variable leaf milfoil is actually fairly manageable compared to like naiad that produces seeds, spreads really rapidly, is very, very aggressive. And it depends on the size of your lake. Big lake up down east has a huge infestation, and I'm not sure if they've really tackled plant control yet. They're still surveying. As far as if you, the plant control grants, that is something that an organization applies for. The rapid response, so if you think you find an invasive plant or an infestation on your lake in the summertime, you would contact the Department of Environmental Protection. The Lake Stewards of Maine can also do the identification. So first you have to get it identified by either the DEP or Lake Stewards of Maine. And then if it is found to be invasive and you have patches of it in your lake, then a rapid response team would be sent out to do an assessment and potentially pull it out. And if there are any associations or anybody here that are not yet, don't have courtesy boat inspection programs yet and would like to start that up, you can contact me. The cost share grants for that have already been awarded for this year, but I've certainly helped people set up volunteer stuff on their lakes in the past, and then they can sign on for grants in next year.
Great, thank you. So I don't know if you'll know the answer to this question. It's a question specifically about the big lake infestation. And they're wondering how long that infestation has been there. I know we just discovered it, but you know, that one cove does have quite a bit of variable leaf milfoil present. You know, I think that there is sort of a way to determine, you know, by the size of the stalk of the plant, how long it's been there, but I don't really know for sure how to determine that. And I don't know if you've had discussions with people sort of coming to a determination about how long it's been there.
I have not been involved with those conversations. I don't know if Karen Hannell might know from the DEP. She is here. I'm gonna allow her to talk if she wants to. If she wants to unmute. Hi, Karen.
You you got a voice. We don't know how long it's been there, but it's definitely been there for several years, and it's throughout the lake. This year, there will be a lot of volunteers from Lake Stewards of Maine, and DEP will go up there, and we'll be doing a more comprehensive survey. Last year with COVID, that sort of put the survey on hold, but it's been there longer than, I would definitely say longer than 3 years.
And which is one of the reasons why it's so important to do the plant surveys too. And something, boat inspectors, I've run into boat inspectors sometimes that if their lake is not infested, they kind of don't do a thorough inspection when the boat is coming out. And it is critical that every boat is inspected fully, because you never know. Your lake may have an infestation, and you, as the CBI, might be the one that discovers it. So it's very important. We can't assume that any lake in Maine is safe or clean.
Absolutely. So Karen did mention also that the vulnerability analysis was first done by Don Cameron from the Maine Natural Areas Program about 10 years ago, and that Denise Blanchette and Becky Schaffner, who's the GIS person at DEP, worked to update the analysis in 2017. And I will sort of add to that and just say that when that analysis came out, we found out that Cobbossee Lake, which is one of the lakes in our watershed, was like the second most vulnerable lake, according to that analysis in the state. And that following year, we found 2 invasive aquatic plants in Cobbossee Lake when we did a full survey. So it definitely showed that there was some validity to that analysis.
Yeah.
And
it makes a lot of sense.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And she also listed the link for that analysis that folks can check that out. There was somebody who's wondering, and I really don't know the answer to this. What lakes do the wardens go to? I know it really varies, and there's not enough wardens to cover all the lakes, but do you have any idea how they determine what lakes they actually visit?
I don't know how they determine that. I know that they try to visit all of them. I have seen wardens on very, very small ponds. I know that they don't just focus on kind of the big populated areas. Sebago Lake and the Sebago Lake region has its own warden because Sebago Lake is so busy and so big. But I know that they will often travel around to the smaller lakes and ponds as well. That's a little bit disconcerting, honestly, because they will go and launch their boat in every lake in Maine. But they may not get to all of them every summer. So I don't know. And you can look on their website, and they have kind of regional like wardens for different regions and different counties. And some of the counties have one. So you can think about how difficult it is for them to visit every lake.
Absolutely. I think that's all of the questions for today. And you've already answered one that I had, just sort of, if there was a lake association that wanted to get started with the CBI program, you think they should just contact you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Just get in touch with me, and we'll work it out. We added 2 new associations this year to the grant list, and so we're always kind of open to talking to more. I mean, expanding the program is critical. Getting more. I mean, there's thousands of Maine lakes that do not have a CBI program. So
Yeah, and there, we've already sort of talked about this. The prevention is a lot less expensive than trying to pull the plants once you have them. It is much more cost effective. So if a lake association is looking for a way to have a big impact on their lake, starting a courtesy boat inspection program is probably the best way for them to have a great impact.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I wasn't too far off for a lot of things for those of you that have been with the program for a lot longer than me. Hopefully I didn't get things too muddled. I graduated from high school in 2001 when that really comprehensive bill was passed. So I was not present for that.
You did great as far as I'm concerned.
All right.
Great. Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you everybody for attending.
One more thing.
One more.
Here in southwestern Maine, it is raining. It's been raining all day. I expect I will be going out after dark tonight, and my expectation is I will see some salamanders and frogs.
Yay.
So if anybody else has been getting some rain today, it's warm enough that the salamanders and frogs will be on the move.
Be careful driving home at night.
Mm-hmm.
Watch out for those hoppers and slitherers.
Yeah. Right.
All right. Have a great evening, everybody. Thank you.
Right.